For years, the AI in our code editors has kind of felt like a really smart autocomplete, right? It suggests the next line, maybe a whole function, but we've always been the ones in the driver's seat. Well, it might be time to hand over the keys, because a massive shift is happening right now. We're moving from an AI that just suggests to an AI that actually acts.
I mean, think about your workflow right now. You hit tab, you accept a suggestion from your AI assistant, but you're still the one who has to string it all together, run the tests, fix the bugs. Your AI, it's like a helpful passenger, for sure, but it's not taking the wheel.
Okay, but this next generation, it doesn't just suggest. No way. It takes your instructions and it opens a terminal, it rates files, it runs commands. It can complete entire development cycles all on its own. See, it's not just an assistant anymore, it's an agent.
So, what does this new class of tool actually look like in practice? Well, right at the forefront of this whole evolution is a system called Claude Code. And let me tell you, it represents a completely new way of weaving AI into a developer's daily workflow. Now, this is not like the IDE extensions we're all used to. Claude Code lives directly in your terminal. And this is so crucial. It's not just another plugin for your editor, it's a native part of your shell. It's literally designed to act like a senior developer pair programming with you, one who can handle really complex, multi-step tasks from the very beginning to the very end. So you've got to be wondering, how does an AI go from just suggesting a line of code to actually running a full test suite? Well, the magic, as they say, is in the architecture. Let's break down how this agent really thinks and gets things done. Okay, so the whole foundation is built on this paradigm called computer use. And it's actually pretty simple. The AI is given the ability to use the computer just like a person would. We're talking simulating mouse clicks, keyboard inputs, and, this is the big one, executing shell commands. This is the bridge, right? It connects your plain English request to the actual system-level actions needed to make it happen. At its core, the agent runs on a simple, iterative loop that, well, it's going to look very familiar to any developer out there. First, it gathers context, reading files, searching the code base. Then it takes an action, writing some code, running a build script. And finally, it verifies its own work, running tests, checking for errors, and it just keeps repeating that loop over and over until the job is done. Simple, right? All right, now here's where it gets really clever, especially when it's managing complex tasks. See, instead of the AI making like dozens of separate calls to its tools, which just eats up time and its limited memory, what we call the context window, Claude Code does something called Programmatic Tool Calling. What that means is it actually writes and runs a small Python script to manage all the tools it needs for the job. This is just way more efficient. It cuts down on the delay and saves that precious context for the stuff that really matters. And check this out. This is a brilliant way to get the agent up to speed on your specific project. You just create a file called claude.md. And honestly, just think of it as the exact onboarding document you'd give a new human developer joining your team. It defines the tech stack, explains your coding conventions, and tells the agent exactly how to run, test, and deploy the app. It's just an incredibly powerful way to give the AI all the project-specific context it needs, super fast. So with all these new agent-like capabilities, the natural question is, okay, how does this actually stack up against the tools we're already using every day? Let's take a look at the current landscape and see. And when you look at the hard data, the performance is, well, it's pretty impressive. On the SOE bench, which is this really tough benchmark for solving real-world, messy engineering problems, the models that power Claude Code are scoring significantly higher than their main competitors. And we're not just talking about completing little snippets of code here. This is about successfully fixing complex issues that span an entire code base. So the big takeaway here isn't that one tool replaces the other. That's not it at all. They really serve different purposes. GitHub Copilot, it's still the king for that in-the-moment, line-by-line auto-completion and just raw speed. But when you need to tackle a huge refactor or implement a new feature across a bunch of files or really get a handle on deep architectural patterns, that's where an agent like Claude Code absolutely shines. Okay, of course, powerful tech is only useful if it's actually practical, right? And for any professional developer or engineering manager, that immediately brings up two super important questions. What's this going to cost me, and how do I stay in control? So the pricing is set up in tiers, and it's basically based on how much you use it. It kicks off with a pro plan, which is great for lighter work. And then it scales all the way up to these max plans for the real power users, the people who need a ton more throughput for those complex, all-day coding sessions. But there's a really key cost dynamic you have to understand, and it's called the token compounding problem. Here's the deal. Because the AI doesn't have memory on its own, it's stateless, it has to resend the entire conversation history with every single message just to keep the context. So in a long session, this starts to add up, and even tiny follow-up questions can get pretty expensive.
The good news, though, is that you can totally manage this effectively. The source material points out a few essential habits. Think of them as pro tips for power users. You can use the /compact command to have the AI just summarize the conversation. You can use /clear to just wipe the slate clean, and it's a good idea to get in the habit of restarting your sessions pretty frequently. All this stuff helps keep your costs down and keeps the agent focused on the task at hand.
And what about security? Well, on that front, you are always in control. The whole system is built on a permission model. For any action the agent wants to take, I'm talking modifying a file, running a command, anything, you can set the rule. You can either always allow it, always deny it, or, and this is the default for most things, you can have it ask you for permission every single time. So all this brings us to the really big picture, because a tool this powerful doesn't just change our workflow, right? It starts to raise some pretty fundamental questions about the very nature of software development itself. You know, there's a real, almost philosophical concern floating around the community. The fear is that if an AI handles all the nitty-gritty implementation details, do we start to lose the craft of coding? Do we forget that hard-won intuition that only comes from really struggling with a problem and solving it by hand? And that's a totally valid question. But the prevailing view seems to be that this isn't about replacement, it's about augmentation. The most effective developers out there are adopting a kind of human-AI hybrid model. They're still the architect, the designer, the strategic thinker. They're just using the AI agent as this incredibly powerful tool for automation, for exploration, for handling all the grunt work, and that frees them up to focus on much higher level problems. And all that leaves us with one final and kind of provocative thought. As these agents get more and more capable, maybe the core skill of a software engineer is going to shift. Is it possible that the future is less about painstakingly writing every single line of code and more about becoming an expert at directing an AI to bring a creative and technical vision to life?